welcome back. I am so excited for this next video because it is a World Cup edition. I had so much fun watching the World Cup. It was like the favorite thing that I did over the past month. I loved going on social media and seeing all the memes and the posts. It was like how I used my social media over the last month and a half. And so even though now it's done and my life has gone back to being boring and not full of drama, I was like, let's just continue the fun. So I thought, why not do a World Cup themed book reading challenge? I am reading books from each of the 4 countries that were in the Final Four, plus a bonus because I was just in Croatia and I was cheering for Croatia the whole time in the World Cup, even though they got out way sooner than they were supposed to. Anyway, so yes, without further ado, these are the books that I selected. First one is Croatia. I've read a book from Croatia before. For those of you who don't know, I am doing a challenge to read a book from every country that takes place in that country, but also was written by someone from that country. And so I already had marked off Croatia a couple years ago. This past year I went to Croatia, so I was trying to read more about it. And while this is written by an American, this American married a Croatian, and this is cultural observations that he learned as an outsider about Croatia. So that's why I chose this book, because it's very cultural centered, and the guy marries a Croatian. But yeah, it's called Chasing a Croatian Girl, and it is by, it says A Survivor's Tale by Cody McLean Brown. So that's the Croatia book that I chose. The next book, so for those of you who don't know, the Final Four contestants, the Final Four teams in the World Cup were France, England, Argentina, and Spain. And so I chose a book from each one of those countries. For England, I chose Animal Farm by George Orwell. I've already read several books from England, from the UK. One of my goals is to read more classics, and so this checks off that box. I've never read Animal Farm before. I've heard about it. I've heard that George Orwell, he wrote it off of socialism and the Soviet Union, which when I lived overseas, the country that I was in was a part of the Soviet Union, so that makes this book extra interesting for me. So yeah, we'll see how this book turns out. It's very short, it's 100 pages, so it should be a really quick read. But yeah, I'm excited to learn more about his thought process. I basically just know that it's animals take over, and that's it. So yeah, that is my England book. My next book is Fresh Water for Flowers. And first of all, just this cover is very beautiful. I am really excited to read this book. Even though I've read a book from France before, I read The Little Prince. It's not based in France. It's more of a fantasy, not fantasy, I don't know what to call it, fairy tale. I don't know what to call The Little Prince. But this one takes place in France, and so I wanted to give it a go. But it's about a cemetery caretaker, and she gets wrapped up in this case and starts to uncover stuff from this one person's family who died, and then it somehow ties to her and her past. So it just sounded very interesting. And so yes, picked up this book to read. The author's name is Valerie Perrin. I think that's how you say it. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, France and England fought against each other in the battle for 3rd place in the World Cup. So these are those 2 books. The next book that I selected is from Argentina, and it is called Elena Knows. It's by Claudia Pinheiro, and this book, the main character's daughter dies, and she goes on an investigation to like figure out why, and it's just whole like mystery involved. If you can't tell, I like mysteries. I prefer it over several other genres. I feel like mystery, like cultural fiction mystery, is like where I like thrive and often find myself. So chose this book. Again, I've never read a book from Argentina, so this is my selection. It checks off that box. Apparently, I didn't know this until I bought the book, but apparently it is now on Netflix. There's a movie that's been made off of it, so once I read the book, I can watch the movie. But yes, there's my Argentina book. And then last but not least, we have our winner of the World Cup. We have Spain. And I'm reading the book The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I've seen this one. I've seen this one in bookstores, but with like a different cover. And honestly, I don't really know too much. I know it's a murder mystery. I know it takes place in Barcelona in 1945. But yeah, I kind of went blind into all of these books, which is okay. I honestly sometimes prefer that. But the more I like know about the book, the more reviews I read, the less likely I'm willing to read it, unfortunately. It's a bad habit of mine. So yes, chose this book for Spain. Those of you who have lived under a rock for the past like 2 months, Spain and Argentina went up against each other in the final, and the right team won. Let's just say that. So Spain won. Very happy for Spain. Excited to read this book. I'm excited to read more translated works. I'm excited to read more books from other countries. It's been my goal since moving back to the States to read more books from public libraries or on Libby. And so I was successful in doing that for 2 of my books. Unfortunately, the downside to reading more international books is that they can be harder to find at public libraries. So I did have to today go to the bookstore, and I didn't even know if they would have them at my local bookstore, but they did. So I was able to purchase these 2 books, and then this book I purchased because I was going overseas to Croatia. So trying to read more books and not build up my home collection, because hopefully I can go back overseas in a couple of years. So we're trying to like get rid of books, donate books, be more economical with the books that I choose. So yes, these are the books that I will be reading. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you find this challenge fun, because it was so fun to watch the World Cup. It was so fun to see how different countries connected with their host city. It just like made me really happy, and I learned things about different cultures through watching the World Cup. So yeah, hopefully these books help me learn more about these countries and the mindsets and things that locals in that country experience. So stay tuned for more books. And I don't know if you guys noticed in the back, but that's Mochi. Mochi says hi. She's a big book reader. But yes, stay tuned. The book. It was really good. I don't know why I am surprised by this, but I really enjoyed reading this book, Animal Farm. I wasn't surprised by so what I had going into it, I knew that animals were going to take over a farm that was originally run by humans. And that's basically all I knew. And that's what happened. And so it wasn't like you were surprised by the plot and even how it ended. It wasn't like I was surprised by how it ended, but it was the way that things were articulated and the way that the pigs took charge, and they took charge gradually. Everyone was equal. And then slowly they wrote up these rules right away, and slowly they started to tweak the rules, and the other animals couldn't read, and so they didn't know that the rules had been tweaked, or they were just gaslit that nope, this is just how it always was. So the book was very fascinating. It was a very, very, very quick read. Ryan and I went to the hospital for his like normal weekly checkup, and I basically just read it all, almost in one sitting. So it was a very quick read. Just crazy to see people, like animals, depravity, and just how like something that started out as like a good idea got warped because the people in charge just became so power hungry. And so yeah, I just don't want to give any spoilers, but also it kind of just speaks for itself what it is. The pigs were at the top of the pecking order, and there was 2 main leaders, and then one leader got kicked out, and there's a bunch of other animals, and they just did what they were told, worked hard. A hardworking animal eventually got overworked, and then the pigs just sent him away to be slaughtered at like the animal plant. So that was just crazy how you saw like people just, or animals just like, yep, 1 minute you're working for me, but as soon as like you don't do your job, you're like nothing to me. And so George Orwell, he wrote this, and it was interesting because in the front of at least my copy, they talk a little about George Orwell, and they're like, he was for socialism, he believed in it, but he did not believe in a totalitarian socialist system. And that's what he wrote about, and he wrote it based off of the Soviet Union and Stalin. And so the main pig is based off of Stalin, and the other pig is based off of like Stalin's main rival. So that was really interesting. It was really interesting just how the end, things were so corrupted. There was a lot of discouragement. There was a lot of just like gaslighting into thinking that this is what you want. So yeah, stay tuned to the end of this video to see how I ranked this book, but I really enjoyed it. Even though I wasn't surprised at all about like how it went, I really enjoyed how this book was. So that's it on this one. Already like halfway through, which is crazy. I am on page 80. There is like 150 pages, so the first bit flew by. It does start slow. It flew by, but it also is like a very slow book in that the whole story, I believe, will take place in just one day. So that is a very unique way of telling the story, and it's about the mother, Elena, who is in search of someone who owes her, like, who's in like debted to her. And the reason that she goes to her is because her daughter passed away, and the leading suspicions by the police, by the like pastor at the local church, is that the daughter took her own life. And so yeah, and the mother doesn't believe that that is the case. The mother believes that someone killed her, that someone like set and framed all this. And so the mother is out to like figure out what happened. And something that's interesting is that the mom, Elena, she has Parkinson's, and she has it pretty bad. And she also has this muscular illness where her neck is and head are like stuck in this position, so she can't fully look up. And so the book is set in 3 different sections, and each section is like, well, the first one starts with her taking her second pill of the day, just for her illnesses, and the second part is after pill 3, the third part is after pill 4. So that's a really interesting way of like divvying up the book. But yeah, it's just really like, it's a slow moving book, but it also is slow moving because that's kind of just how her life is. And so it's very eye-opening into reading about someone who has Parkinson's, and it's sad. It's very sobering. I'm very intrigued, but it's also very sobering. So we will see what happens if the mother's suspicions are true, or if the police do have it right. I finished Elena Knows, and this book is really interesting. Probably maybe a mid rating, but we'll see. Stay tuned till the end. But it was very well written, and the whole book took place during a day. And like the title says, Elena Knows, and the thing that is interesting is that it keeps referring to Elena knows. She knows a lot about pain and suffering, and she has Parkinson's. And I don't know if the author has Parkinson's or knows someone who does, but she really did do her research, because you could just feel the suffering. She wrote it felt like a visceral reaction to her, and I felt like so bad for her, and just like, oh, like to swallow a pill. So like her head was like stuck in a certain position to swallow a pill. It was like almost impossible. She had to like tilt her head a certain way, but she couldn't fully do it. And then to swallow was really difficult. And it was just heartbreaking, her describing like she has to take these pills so that she can walk and move her body, but also the act of even taking the pill was really hard. And the whole journey, so she ends up taking 4 pills that day, and she's trying to go to this one person's house because she believes that they are indebted to her, and she really wants them to help her solve whether her daughter actually took her own life or if it was a murder. And so she's going there, and it keeps saying Elena knows, she knows about this, she knows about that, she knows her daughter. And then at the end, you realize that, oh, the whole story is a lot more nuanced than you think. She makes it to the person's house, and she realizes, oh, the story's a lot more nuanced. Maybe she wasn't indebted. Maybe it's her daughter's fault. Maybe it's just not how it seems. And so it was a really artistic way of saying like, oh, Elena knows a lot of things, and she's like knows to experience a lot of things and a lot of suffering, but maybe she doesn't know what actually was going on in the specific story that she thought the one person was indebted to her, and in regards to her daughter Rita. And so it was a pretty sobering book. It was really well written. I'm glad I read it, but it probably wouldn't be for everyone. Yeah, the author wrote it really well. And so it's one of those books that I wouldn't necessarily recommend to everyone, but it is like well done. So stay tuned to see how I rated it. Hey guys! Next book is Chasing a Croatian Girl. And this is a book that I actually read a couple months ago, but because I'm doing this World Cup series and was rooting for Croatia, I included it just as like a bonus. I'm sporting my Luka Modric jersey right now. I wish they could have gone further, but it is what it is. But yes, that's why I included this book, just as like a nod to them. And even though the author isn't Croatian, he does write a lot of different cultural
things that he learned during his time in Croatia. So there were several things I liked, and there was a couple of things I didn't like about the book. Some of the things I didn't enjoy or like wasn't my favorite was, one, the title, Chasing a Croatian Girl. He literally only, like, the first 2 chapters was like chasing her or like pursuing her. The rest of the time they were a couple, they were married, they were living together, and so it just didn't feel like he was like chasing her. They were already like a unit. Another critique I have is that sometimes the ways that he shared the stories, or the way that he would like tell the joke in the story, I didn't feel like it came across as like super caring for like the Croatian people, or like the people are doing this because of like hundreds if not thousands of years of tradition, and they care about you in their collectivist culture. And yes, you're from an individualistic culture, but like you have, I don't know, I just feel like he should have been more understanding. And so didn't love that in some of his stories. But some of the things I did like were mainly just learning about the culture, and I was extra motivated because I was going there in a couple weeks, but learning that they are a huge coffee culture. Azerbaijan is a big tea culture, and so it was just fun to see that. Also see that like Azerbaijan and Croatia, both big collectivist cultures. Croatia is very Catholic, but oftentimes it's more culturally Catholic. That was something I learned. I learned that Croatians apparently don't like a breeze or like a fan blowing in the house or like a draft. It's like, I don't know if it's superstitious, but they're really against that apparently. I learned about just like the mom or the grandma really making a ton of food, and this is what happened in Azerbaijan too. They put a ton of food in front of you, and if you finish your plate, they're putting even more food on your plate. They're very hospitable, very kind. They are they can be opinionated about, like, so he has like a child, and they can be opinionated about like what your child is wearing. They usually according to the book, will be like, your child is freezing, you have to put on more clothes, and then they'll be like, you're such a bad parent. And he grew up where like he was running around barefoot with like shorts and just like not as many layers on. So he said that was like hard to deal with. He also talked about how like the public transportation, a lot of locals don't necessarily pay for it. They just like hop on and off. It's kind of like the local joke apparently. And then when I was in Croatia, I asked someone about it, and like, oh yeah, I pay for the Zet maybe like once or twice a year. So that was really interesting to like hear firsthand what he was saying. But yeah, in general, I really I enjoy learning. I didn't necessarily enjoy reading, but I enjoy learning about Croatia. So that's my review. So I am on page 300. About like 60 pages ago, the book took quite a turn, and I finally just like read enough that I can put it down. So interesting. I thought I knew what was happening. It was just like a slow, sad, day in the life type book, and then maybe at page like 200 or something, no, maybe like 150, we learned something interesting, and then again like 250-ish something else happens, and I'm so intrigued. Guys, I finished the book. I've been stewing on my thoughts for a couple days, and wow, I really enjoyed this book. So as I was saying, it takes place in France, and the main character, the main girl character's name is Violet,
and it follows her, I think, for like 20 years, or like there's flashbacks for 20 years. And it's interesting because we're following her, but then I'll be flashbacks back to her life 20 years ago, and so it's kind of like back and forth that way. And then she receives this like journal from someone, and then we get the flashbacks of the journal entry, and then about like halfway through we get her husband Felipe's like point of view as well. And so even though there's like several different point of views, and then at one point we get someone else's point of view, so even though there's several different point of views going on, it wasn't confusing for me. It like you're very clearly in that person's thoughts or in that person's setting. But this book was very nuanced. This book just talked about like forgiveness and how things aren't always as they seem, how you might look at a person and their actions and think a certain way about them, but you actually don't know what's going on in their head. Very similar to Elena Knows in some ways. But yeah, everyone except I would say one person, you didn't expect their thoughts to be the way they were. So that was fun to just like see that like nuanced progression throughout the book. Yeah, it was so interesting. I would say it's not like a mystery, it's like a literary fiction book. It was about 500 pages. I just really enjoyed learning her story, learning about so one day this mysterious person shows up at our house, and he has to, his mom's final wishes were that after she passed away that she be cremated and then be placed on like her lover's grave. And it was that person whose journal the caretaker is now reading. And so there's like that story, there's some romance, there's some like heartbreak between her and her husband. There is another heartbreak that happens like maybe 200 pages in. There's just like a lot of ups and downs. For being like 500 pages and being a literary fiction, you'd think it would be like slower, but everything was connected. And I think like I did a video of, oh, this better like end the way that I want it to. It didn't, but that was okay. It was still satisfying, and yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Yeah, don't want to give away too much, so stay tuned as always for how I rank all these books at the end. This book is quite interesting, and not just because of like the story, but like I debated many times stopping it, which is interesting. It feels so. The other book, Fresh Water for Flowers, is about the same page count, but this book felt so much slower. I don't know if it's because it's like more mystery, more like solving something, and it just like they were slow in gathering things, while the other book is more of a literary fiction, and so like you kind of maybe expect the slower pace, but that book I just like ate up. So yeah, I almost stopped this 4 or 5 times because it felt so slow. It is about this boy Daniel, so the story takes place in Spain, in Barcelona in 1945, and when Daniel is 10, his father takes him to the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. So it's just this kind of like secret book labyrinth shop, like just so many books, and his father goes, you can choose any book you want from here, but then that book is like your book, and you like need to guard it and protect it.
And so his son, Daniel, chooses the book, The Shadow of the Wind, which was interesting because it's like, oh, he chose the book The Shadow of the Wind and this is the book Shadow of the Wind. I don't know. I just thought that was like an interesting thing. And he falls in love with it, becomes obsessed with it, like wants to learn more about the author of the book. But he's like young, and so he like slowly starts to forget, and then he goes, he like, a couple of years go by, he like is still in love with the book, starting to investigate more. His father helps him get in touch with some other like bookshop owners and like people in the literary world, and he's asking around, and he like, this young boy gets involved, he like falls in love with this one girl, and she knows more about the author, and so they hit it off, and then there's a falling out, but then it's apparently a character in the book that he's reading he like meets in real life, and that freaks him out, and the person wants his book, and you learn that he wants his book to burn it because there's this person going around burning all of the books by that one author. And so he's like, why are they burning all those books? I need to find the author. I need to find more of the books to like save them from this person. And then throughout that process, he befriends someone who is my favorite character, his sidekick. I won't give any spoilers, but his sidekick is just like so dramatic, so just like full of life and character and nonsense and loves love, and is just like kind of like the best friend you could have, even though he makes some questionable decisions. He like is kind of like the cool aunt, or like the cool, not cool aunt, I guess, like the cool uncle, or like the cool like cousin for Danielle. And so they start like searching for different things, and the police are onto them, and they're like, why are the police onto us? This is so weird, what's going on? And that's the part that's like really slow. It doesn't feel like you're learning a lot about the books, the author who's trying to find. That story plot just kind of like stops, and like the police and the running around and the mundaneness like takes over for a while, and you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing reading this. And then, so I like several times almost stopped halfway through. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be doing this anymore, reading this anymore. And I had like stopped reading it, and like, because I had stopped reading it, it kind of like gave me freedom to like, no, you're fine, you don't need to read it. So then I started reading it again, and it was still really slow, but I finished. I'll just say I finished. It was, the ending was interesting. It was like action-packed, which was fun. But just overall, I feel like I have so many questions. Like, why was the bad guy so angry? Why, like that part doesn't really make sense to me. Why things with the author, like there was just like so many questions. It wasn't the most satisfying read. It was a slow read. But I did read it. I was trying to get better at like not finishing books, and then here I am. I thought that's what this video was going to be, me not finishing the book, but then I read it. So very interesting overall. Like the more action-packed mysteries, not the slow drawn-out mysteries. Yeah, this is the last book I have to read, so now you guys get to know how I ranked all the things. It is finally time for me to share the results of all the World Cup books I have been reading. I am gonna go from lowest ranked to highest ranked, and we'll see how they compare against how the actual World Cup went this year. First up, unfortunately, is my beloved Croatia, Chasing a Croatian Girl by Cody McLean Brown. What I liked was that this is a good book for learning about Croatia from an outsider's perspective, as someone who like might want to go to Croatia. Something that I didn't love was just his like writing style and his sense of humor wasn't for me, but maybe for other people it'd be okay. So who I would recommend this to?
someone going to Croatia, someone who is just trying to learn more about different cultures, I think this could be a really good fit for you. And my rating is 3 stars. The next book number 4 in 4th place, is Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. I really enjoyed this book. It was definitely heavier and more nuanced, but it did a really good job of showcasing someone struggling with the disease, showing how like a caretaker can struggle, and just because you think a certain way doesn't mean that that's actually what's true and what's going on. So that's what I liked. It was slower, so that's, you know, the whole thing takes place in a day, so if that's not something you're into, you might not like this book as much. And then who would it be for? If you're mourning, if you're a caretaker, this might resonate with you, or if you're just wanting to learn more about cultures and read books from different countries, I think this is also a great fit for you. My rating overall for this book was a 3.5. The next book, this book would be 3rd place, is the book from Spain, The Shadow of the Wind. I have so many mixed reviews about this. What did I like? The mystery was interesting, and I liked the concept of like the cemetery of forgotten books. I thought that was just really interesting. I wish they kind of talked more about that in the book. What I didn't like was how slow it was. I felt like they could have tightened things up a little bit. Another thing that I loved the side buddy. He was just great. So who would this be good for? I feel like this would be good for, like, if you like mysteries, want to read a book from a different country, are not deterred by like a bigger book. This book has like 500 pages in it. Yeah, so that's what I think, that's who I think it'd be good for. My overall rating for this, even though I almost DNF'd it like 4 times, is 3.75. We're down to our last 2 books. In the World Cup, this would be like the final. So what we have left, we have the final between England and France. And the book, the country that got 2nd place is England. Animal Farm. This is like what I expected it to be, and it was really interesting. And as someone who like wants to learn more about Soviet culture and like socialism and it's people's reactions to it, that was really fascinating for me. Honestly, it was so short. Like, I don't really have a lot of negative things. It's a classic. I feel like overall, this is like, I have only good things to say about this. It was really, really interesting for me. Who would this book be good for? Learning more about socialism, totalitarian governments, want to read something by George Orwell, want to read a classic. This fits a lot of those genres. I gave this book a 5-star. Different from other 5 stars I've given in the past, but I still was just like so satisfied with how it went. That means in 1st place, who won our book edition of the World Cup, we have France with the book Fresh Water for Flowers by Valerie Perrine. This book was so lovely. I really enjoyed it. I love the nuance. I love how you thought you knew a character and then they changed, and then it just shows how people aren't so black and white. I love how they talked about mourning and loss and heavy things. I've experienced several of those over the past year, and so I really resonated with that. What I didn't like is that so many people got cheated on. There was so much, like, whether it was cheating on with this partner, being cheated on by like someone who you're married to, I didn't love that. And it's just like baked in like a normal part of the story, a normal part of the book.
Like abuse is another theme in here, more emotional than physical. So that's a warning. Who I would recommend this for, it isn't everyone's book, but more thoughtful, like it's a more thoughtful book, a deeper, more nuanced book if you want to read a book from a different country, France. I would definitely recommend that. This could be your book. So all that to say, this was another 5-star. Super excited that I got 2 5 stars out of this series. Honestly, it's been a long time since I've given a book a 5-star, and I got it twice in the same set. So thanks for tuning in. I love the World Cup. It's funny to see how things stacked up in my book edition versus the World Cup edition. Like, subscribe, all the good fun things, and stay tuned for more videos.